Mic check 1 2. It's the Y2K collector, and unfortunately, it is not 2002, and we do not have the ability to get every game that we want for $4 anymore. Games are just expensive. I think a lot of us thought that the prices of video games were going to go back down post 2020 boom. But what we're seeing is that that's not happening at all. A lot of the prices for games, especially the more sought after games, are either holding steady or in some cases they're actually going up. Now, one of the things that's helping the retro gaming community is the re releases of certain games being added to digital platforms or online services like the Switch Online or Game Pass or anything like that. And then obviously advancements in emulation also aid the gaming community in being able to play some of these more sought after games that just are not affordable anymore. And just because a game is expensive does not mean that the game is good, doesn't mean that it's a very fun game to play. But sometimes it's really just about the experience. Sometimes you just want to experience a game because video games are really perspective based. Like, for instance, I think Evolution on the Dreamcast is one of the greatest RPGs out there, right? But that's just because I have a personal connection to Evolution, and it was one of the first RPGs that I had ever played on the Dreamcast, right? So there's a ton of better RPGs out there. There's probably even better RPGs on the Dreamcast. When you think about Grandia 2 and Skies of Arcadia, and the list goes on. But for me, Evolution was a great RPG, and a lot of people probably don't even know about Evolution or Evolution 2, because that just doesn't pop up on their radar. And so when we think about some of these, expensive games, a lot of times it's really just about you being able to experience it for yourself so that you can come to your own conclusion. Now in 2025, it can feel very difficult to get some of these more expensive games, and I think the challenge that a lot of people are having is figuring out how to do it. If you're an older collector and you remember when a lot of these games were $10 and $15, even if you have the money, it's probably really difficult for you to just even bring yourself to pay some of these market prices. And I know that because it's very difficult for me to cough up one, two, three, $400 for some of these games, just in general. I have not paid cash for an expensive game in a really long time. Well, I take that back. I have paid for maybe one or two more rare expensive games during one of GameStop's promotions. But even with what I paid, I still didn't pay market price. I got at least 28 to 30% off the item. So I'll make an exception in that case. But my point is that I'm not paying full market price for any rare expensive games these days. And one of the things that I'm doing is I'm trading. And trades will probably be your best friend for now until we either see the bottom fall out of retro game prices or something drastically changes. And so far in 2025, I've added about five what some would call more rare expensive games, and I'm going to show you some of these games that I've traded for here now. And some of these you've seen on the channel already, but Silent Hill Book of Memories, this was a game that I definitely traded for. Silent Hill 3, had to trade a lot of games away to get this game. And to be quite honest with you, when I picked this game up, even this case wasn't even as clean as it is. I actually wound up having to do a case swap so that I could clean this up. So to make this copy as, the 9 out of 10 that it is now. So you have those two games. Did a trade for Lunar, traded away some GameCube games to pick up Lunar, the Silver Star. Many of you remember my trade for Popful Mail. And then now my most recent trade, which was for this copy of Shining Wisdom, which when it comes to the Sega Saturn, man, the music in Sega Saturn games is so nostalgic. Like Sega Saturn and Sega CD games, that music is so 90s. It's so nostalgic. I can't get over it. But I say all that to say that, these games, they're not getting more popular, right? They're only getting more and more scarce. they're only getting harder and harder to find. And yeah, could someone come out with a remake of Popful Mail for the Switch? Yeah, they could, but it's still not going to have the classic case. It's not going to have the original print. It's not going to have the original working designs artwork that we saw. It's not going to be original. And I think, at some point or another, some of these items are really just becoming collector's pieces. They're just becoming not art pieces, but genuine collector's pieces, pieces that collectors want to have, whether it's for the sake of preserving history or whether it's for the sake of, just being able to have it as shelf candy, or in the event that they do have the original hardware, maybe they just want to play it in this format for nostalgia's sake. But I think acquiring these games is going to require a little bit more savvy if you do intend on building up this type of a collection. And so, like here now in 2025, a lot of what I find myself doing is I find myself buying a lot of trade chips, a lot of bargaining chips that I can use to acquire certain games that I don't necessarily want to pay for. And as I go around, collecting different games here and there are certain games that I pick up that I may not mind having in my collection, but I also know that if an opportunity were to present itself for me to trade that game away to get a different game, then I'd be okay doing that too. So, and I think that's just kind of how my collecting strategy has kind of morphed a little bit. Where, like I said, I don't mind picking up certain games. I don't mind having certain games in my collection. But if an opportunity came where it's like, all right, well, you know what? This person is looking for Super Mario World 3 and they're wanting some of these, more basic Nintendo games. I have no problem trading those games away. I mean, a good example is, games like Dragon Quest 7. I don't mind having Dragon Quest 7 in my 3DS collection, but if an opportunity came up where I could trade this game away along with, say, like, The Legend of Zelda Spirit Tracks for something, whether it be a Sega CD game or a Dreamcast game, or even like a Super Nintendo game, because I still have games on my Super Nintendo wish list. As many of you know, I'm still desperately searching for a copy of Hagane, right? So, and there have been times where I've said, man, I'm willing to trade away, a 10% of my collection away for a copy of Hagane, right? That's where I'm at. So I think you have to be willing to trade and you have to be willing to give up something. And 9 times out of 10, these deals aren't necessarily going to be done with your mom and pop shop. Mom and pop shops are not going to cut a deal with you, a trade deal for rare games that's going to be worth your while, because 9 times out of 10, they're probably going to give you, 50% on the trade value for your items, at which point you might as well just pay cash for the game that you're going for anyway, because you're going to give up so much in trade value that it doesn't make sense trying to do these deals in a mom and pop shop. I think your better bet is to leverage Facebook for these types of deals. Leverage your local resellers for these types of deals. Resellers are typically tapped in on some of the harder to find games, on some of the more expensive games. And because they're looking for a particular type of game, you may have easy to find, easy to sell items in your collection that they'll probably want more than the games that they're, trying to sell. Because I can tell you right now, out of all these games that you're looking at, if I were to post, all 3 of these games on eBay, this game is going to sit. This game is definitely going to sit. And Lunar might sit for a little bit as well. Silent Hill 3 will probably sell pretty fast because there's still a really strong market for the Silent Hill games. People just love Silent Hill. Probably not so much Book of Memories because it's on the Vita and not many people have the hardware to play this game. I think a lot of people have moved off the Vita. Not saying the Vita isn't still popping. I know there's a strong Vita community, but just in general, I think if I were to post all these up for sale, Silent Hill 3 is going to go the fastest. It's going to go flying right out the door because, like I said, people still like the Silent Hill games. But and for the most part, a lot of these games typically sit. Most resellers don't even really like these types of games because they don't sell. And for resellers, not only are they looking at value, but they're also looking at how fast a game will sell. So, I mean, just some food for thought. I think trading is probably going to be the way that I acquire even more Grail items. I'm working on a few deals in the background to pick up some more games, some more retro games. We'll see. We'll see. But even behind all that, I am kind of picking up some really hard to find and hard to pick up Switch games, some indie titles. For me, when it comes to modern games, it's really not going to be the AAA stuff. It's really going to be that those indie games, those, you know, more in the cut type of Switch and PS5 and PS4 games that kind of give you the vibes of like a retro game. I mean, an example here on the PlayStation 5, which I showed in my last video, After Image. After Image is a PS5 game, but it gives you that kind of Metroidvania style feel. It's produced by Modus, which has done a few of those types of indie modern retro styling games. And those are some of the companies to look out for, right? Like Modus, the guys behind the guys who are behind Hades, Team 17, the guys that did Dead Cells, that group. I'm drawing a blank on all of these companies, but you guys are you know, if you buy enough Switch games, if you buy enough PS5 games, these are the modern day companies that have replaced companies like Atlas and, you know, Hudson Soft and, you know, Square Enix. Those used to be like Capcom, Konami. Those were the companies in the 90s that the second you saw Konami, Capcom, Atlas, Gelco, once you saw those companies, you know, Koei Tecmo, you knew that it was going to be a really cool indie title. And now we have these new companies that are kind of replacing those companies, and they're the new Konamis and Capcoms of the world. So I might do a video on that. Maybe I think that would be a good video for us to do, to look at which companies are like the modern day Capcom and the modern day Konami for modern retro games coming out. I think that might be something cool to look at. But just wanted to give some food for thought on ways that you can trade to get some of these more expensive games and not have to, you know, cough up a bunch of cash in one shot just to be able to add these to your collection. But let me know what you think about that strategy. Let me know if you have another strategy that you use, and I'll catch you in the next video. It's the Y2K Collector. Take it easy.